Mr. Chancellor, Michael Harris has made a lifetime commitment to the Canadian literary scene, having a profound impact on the development of poetry in Canada. Born in Glasgow, Scotland, Michael Harris has lived most of his life in Montreal. He attained his undergraduate degree at Sir George Williams University, which merged with Loyola College in 1974 to form Concordia University. It was at Concordia that Mr. Harris received his master's degree. He taught creative writing at McGill University and Concordia University, as well as literature and poetry at Dawson College. His first book of poems, entitled Poems from Ritual, was published in 1967. Ainsi donc s'est amorcée une carrière de 50 ans en poésie, pendant laquelle Michael Harris a contribué de manière notable au rayonnement de la poésie canadienne à l'échelle mondiale. Auteur de plusieurs recueils de poèmes, notamment Sparks, Grace, In Transit, Circus et plus récemment The Gamekeeper, publié en 2017, M. Harris a en outre traduit les œuvres poétiques de Marie-Claire Blais. C'est grâce à lui que les anglophones du Québec peuvent apprécier les poèmes de cette écrivaine québécoise. Sa version, publiée en 1984, figurait parmi les finalistes pour l'obtention du prix de traduction littéraire John Glasgow. In addition, Michael Harris has published reflections on poetry and its place and importance in our society. He has worked tirelessly and selflessly to edit the poetic works of other poets, encompassing over 60 books, helping with their publication. Several of those works were translated from French, and many were shortlisted for or won literary prizes. He has never accepted remuneration, preferring to leave funds to support the publication of new works. He was the founding editor of the Signal Editions poetry series of Véhicule Presse in Montreal from 1981 until 2001, which to date has produced nearly 120 titles. Michael Harris won the CBC Literary Competition in poetry twice, including first prize for poetry in 1988 with his winning entry, Spring Descending. His work Circus, published in 2010, was nominated for the Governor General's Award and shortlisted for the Quebec Writers Federation's A.M. Klein Prize for Poetry. Mr. Harris has taught generations of students and mentored dozens of younger poets. A firm believer that the best poetry involves performance, he has also devoted much of time and effort to poetry readings in Canada and around the world. Michael Harris's many accomplishments, literary, teaching, mentorship, and community service have established him as an important and long-standing contributor to the expansion of Canadian poetry. Mr. Chancellor, I present to you Michael Harris so that you may confer upon him the degree of Doctor of Letters honoris causa.
I now invite McGill's most recent graduate, Dr. Michael Harris, to address convocation. Dr. Harris.
There's a small trick I'm about to perform, which is that I have to hook this into a shirt button, or else I die. Oh, another small trick. Chancellor Meehan, Principal and Vice Chancellor Fortier, Mr. Panda, Chair of the Board of Governors, members of the Platform Party, proud parents and guests, and most of all, the graduating class of 2019. Now, the more perspicacious people in the graduating class will know what that word means. The more perspicacious among you will perhaps recognize that that was a scripted, formal introduction to these proceedings. As an editor, my inclination would be to change the intro to something like, "Good morning, Michael. Good morning, Suzanne, Ram, folks. Welcome to the 2019 Arts edition of McGill's Got Talent." I do admit that that lacks a little of the gravitas appropriate to this occasion. It has taken all of us years of hard work to get to this place. So I'd have to go back and come up with something a little more elegant. I see that I've just put 2 instances of using, quote, that, twice in this paragraph. That's just downright clumsy. That I've even made this observation evidently lands me on the spectrum of the obsessive-compulsive, which condition, you will find, is a useful tool in the makeup of any editor, poet, or literary citizen. Now, I was given this task last November, traditionally to deliver some words of wisdom and Godspeed you on your way, or at least to offer some wellness suggestions for those of you with academic PTSD. But I'm not really wise enough. I'm only 75. I had asked head office here to wait until my centenary, by which time I expect to have generated some wisdom, but apparently they'd already printed the program. And as far as the PTSD goes, I'm not that kind of doctor. In the 7 months since I was told of this most welcome honor, all poets should get one of these, if not the degree itself, at least this outfit. Not one morning came without my waking up and composing a speech to accommodate the 5 to 7 minutes, please don't time this, that I have been allowed to address you. Not one of these little speeches seemed right. Now, in 7 months, you can do the math. That's over 200 speeches. And I'm not getting paid for this. This has been the story of my literary life. Why are they clapping? So I really can't recommend that any of you choose to follow this miserable path, in spite of the fact that the poets among you can't help it, and the literarily bent will probably have no choice. Speaking of money, unlike Robert B. Smith of Morehouse College, I don't have the $40 million to bail you out of your student debt. Sorry. If you are not familiar with that news item, Google it and be amazed. Many of you will be familiar with another 2 of the more viral commencement convocation life improvement addresses, which the Chancellor, had he kept on looking, would have found. Sorry, I just ad-libbed that. No. The first is by the wonderful Admiral William McRaven, which suggests, amongst other things, that when you arise in the morning, you might try making your bed. Accomplishing that task will apparently help you to accomplish any next task that needs accomplishing. Best not to start dreaming up speeches when you wake up. I have first-hand knowledge that that task will interfere with the affirmation task. Okay, I don't make my bed, but a second piece of advice is from one of our own McGillians, McGillites? Folks from here. The abiding controversy in human form, Professor Jordan B. Peterson, who takes the notion of self-improvement to the next level, suggesting that one should clean up one's room. Now, both of these bromides are extensively explicated by their respective authors, which explications you can admire by Googling them on YouTube, Wikipedia, or by calling them directly and personally on their cell phones. If you are still at that stage of social and intellectual maturation wherein you need to be reminded of these domestic functions, even as effective metaphors for your broader development, it may be that you need to stick around here for at least one more academic term to up your game, with the one large bonus that you'll avoid the inconvenience of having to earn a living. If you are a neat freak, none of this advice matters. If you're endemically messy, none of this will matter either, as you're likely to be messy for life. So, sorry, no wisdom, but perhaps a little knowledge of a practical nature. In the 20-odd years I edited for the Signal Editions poetry imprint of Montreal's Véhicule Press, may I offer a tip of my hat here to the publishers, Nancy Morelli and Simon Dardick. We received some 3,000 manuscripts. Everybody in Canada writes, it seems. I was permitted to edit and see through to publication over 50 books written by about 30 poets. The odds of getting published, you don't need your calculator for this, are 100 to 1. This also means that 2,970 people considered the press's rejections woefully wrong-headed, uninformed, or just downright stupid. Most unfortunately, many of these folk turned out to be literary critics, editors of periodicals and competing presses, judges of poetry competitions, and arts grant agencies and frontline interviewers for academic posts. Oh well. And I'm certain that I misread any number of worthy manuscripts, although I'm not alone in my misjudgments. When Eric Blair, I'm sure you know this story, submitted a manuscript dealing with how kitchens functioned in London and Paris, T.S. Eliot turned it down. By doing so, he also eschewed the opportunity to publish Blair's later books, namely Animal Farm and 1984, amongst others. As George Orwell, Blair's Down and Out in Paris and London has also done pretty well over the years, as have all of his other books. Neither are the literary folk always right. One writer wrote this of Joyce's Ulysses: I can't do the accent, and I'm appropriating this terribly, I apologize. I finished Ulysses and think it a misfire. The book is diffuse, it is brackish, it is underbred, not only in the obvious sense, but in the literary sense. A first-rate writer, respects writing too much to be tricky. That was Virginia Woolf. But that's why I apologize for the accent. I never heard her speak, actually. By all means, enter the fray of poetry and writing, reviewing and judging, publishing and teaching, but with at least some notion of the endemic, unsettling uncertainty of it all. One last thought to leave you with. My generation inherited a world that was recovering from a world war. Although we've been involved with other difficult conflicts, we Canadians have not had to endure that kind of cataclysm on our own soil in recent history. We should be extraordinarily grateful for that. There is much else we have yet to deal with, but you don't need the likes of me to tell you what ails us. Right, as indeed you must. Fix what you can in our rather wobbly world. Bravo, and the very best of luck.